What happened to Elizabeth Smart remains one of the most closely followed missing person cases in American history. More than 2 decades later, her story is being revisited through a new documentary that offers deeper insight into her abduction, captivity, rescue, and the life she has built since surviving one of the most traumatic crimes in modern U.S. history. Before we begin, this story contains details that are disturbing, but important to understand. If you value clear, factual breakdowns of major U.S. cases like this one, take a moment now to like the video and subscribe to Coded News. It helps more people find reporting like this, and it allows us to keep bringing you full, verified stories without the noise. Elizabeth Smart was just 14 years old on June 5, 2002, when she was kidnapped from her bedroom in Salt Lake City, Utah. In the middle of the night, a man entered her home, placed a knife to her throat, and forced her out of bed. He warned her that if she made a sound or tried to escape, he would kill her and harm her family. The man was Brian David Mitchell, a self-proclaimed religious prophet who later referred to himself as Emmanuel. Elizabeth was forced to walk with him into nearby foothills, where she was introduced to his wife, Wanda Barzee. From the very beginning, Elizabeth was subjected to fear, manipulation, and control, marking the start of a 9-month ordeal. Mitchell and Barzee moved Elizabeth between isolated campsites and remote locations, keeping her hidden from the public. She was often disguised in heavy clothing and veils when taken outside, making it difficult for anyone to recognize her. Mitchell used religious language to justify his actions, claiming that God had commanded him to abduct Elizabeth and take her as his wife. Barzee assisted in maintaining control over Elizabeth, reinforcing the rules and isolation imposed by Mitchell. During captivity, Elizabeth endured repeated sexual abuse, threats, and psychological trauma. She was often told that escape would result in her death or the deaths of her family members. At times, she was chained, confined, or punished for disobedience. Despite these conditions, Elizabeth later described moments of survival where she focused on staying alive day by day, even as hope faded. While Elizabeth was missing, the search for her became a national effort. Law enforcement agencies, volunteers, and community members searched extensively. Her disappearance dominated headlines, and her family made countless public appeals, desperate for information. The investigation initially faced challenges. Authorities explored numerous leads, some of which proved incorrect. For a period, attention focused on individuals connected to the family through past work at their home. One such person was arrested on unrelated charges and later died in custody, further complicating the case and highlighting early investigative missteps. A major breakthrough came from Elizabeth's younger sister, Mary Catherine, who had been sleeping in the same room on the night of the kidnapping. Months later, while reflecting on that night, she suddenly remembered the voice of the man who had taken Elizabeth. She recognized it as belonging to someone who had previously worked at their home. Her memory led to the creation of a police sketch that was distributed publicly. That sketch proved critical. On March 12, 2003, nearly 9 months after Elizabeth was taken, police spotted Brian Mitchell and Wanda Barzee walking down a street in Sandy, Utah, with a young girl who appeared heavily disguised. Officers approached and questioned them. When shown a flyer, the girl identified herself as Elizabeth Smart. She was alive. Elizabeth was immediately taken to safety and reunited with her family, bringing an emotional end to one of the most widely followed missing child cases in U.S. history. The nation watched as she returned home, though the emotional and psychological recovery was only beginning. In the years that followed, the legal system held her captors accountable. Brian David Mitchell was convicted of kidnapping and related crimes and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Wanda Barzee accepted a plea deal and served more than a decade in prison for her role in the crime. She was later placed under supervision and faced additional legal consequences after violating parole conditions. For Elizabeth, healing was a long and complex process. In the aftermath of her rescue, she struggled with trauma, guilt, and the emotional weight of what she had endured. She has spoken openly about how survivors of abuse often blame themselves, even when they are victims of horrific crimes. It took years for her to fully process the abuse and begin reclaiming her sense of identity and safety. Over time, Elizabeth chose to use her voice publicly. She became an advocate for survivors of sexual violence, child abduction victims, and trauma survivors. She founded an organization dedicated to supporting victims and raising awareness about prevention, recovery, and survivor rights. Today, Elizabeth Smart is a wife and mother, living a life that once seemed impossible during her captivity. She continues to speak publicly, sharing her story not as a symbol of tragedy, but as an example of resilience and survival. She emphasizes that recovery is not linear and that surviving trauma does not define a person's worth or future. The new documentary revisiting her case provides a deeper, more personal look at what happened, not just during the kidnapping, but in the years that followed. It highlights the emotional toll on Elizabeth and her family, the investigative challenges faced by law enforcement, and the strength required to rebuild a life after unimaginable trauma. Elizabeth Smart's story remains a powerful reminder of both vulnerability and resilience. It shows how quickly life can change, how crucial community awareness can be, and how survival can lead to purpose, healing, and impact. And more than 2 decades later, her voice continues to help others find their own. If you're finding this breakdown helpful, take a moment now to like the video. It really does help this channel grow, and subscribe to Coded News for more clear, fact-based reporting on major U.S. stories, true crime cases, and national events.